Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the She Handled It podcast. I am your host, Arwen Becker, and I am super excited for our guest today. But before we get started, I was thinking back to this time period as we're going to be hashing out a topic that reminded me of February 2018. I was super excited because I had taken all this time and energy to schedule this event with all these friends to go to the Showwear Center where we were going to see the Toby Mac concert. And Toby Mac, if you're not familiar, he is a very prolific Christian artist, more of a hip hop kind of rap, very fun to watch and listen to. So I had scheduled that we were going to get a box at the Showwear Center. There were 16 of us going. It was our whole family and a couple of other families and kids from school. It was going to be great. So early that morning, I woke up for this event that we had with all of our team at my office. We went through the event and we were going through our vision. It was really great. It was an effective day. The moment it was over, it was about 11:30 in the morning. I just didn't feel well. And so I headed home thinking, okay, well, I'll just lay down for a nap and then I'll feel better and then we'll go to the concert and leave around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, I got home, took my temperature, and I had 101 degree temperature. And I was so disappointed. And so I recognized, of course, at that point, I wasn't going to get to go. I was going to be the 16th person that had scheduled the whole thing for everybody else, but I wasn't going to get to go. So my husband took our kids, they went, had a blast, sent me all these pictures of it. By the time they got home, it was about 9:30 and my fever was gone. I felt totally fine. And when I woke up that next morning, it was as if nothing had happened. And I remember thinking that morning, going, wait a second, I was doing this really noble thing. You know, I was taking these people and scheduling this great Christian concert. It was going to be so spiritual and wonderful. And yet I didn't get to go. And what I recognized at that moment is that it doesn't matter how noble your intentions are. If you are exhausted, you are exhausted. And sometimes God's going to say, you know what, right now, what you need is to just sit down. And it was such a hard lesson because I was so wanting to go to that concert. But when I look back in the previous 6 months, I was so sick. I was constantly overworking myself. I was constantly pushing too hard. And it was with this thought process that it was for the right reasons, so therefore I could somehow do it. And my guest today knows this all too well. Lynn Adams is a certified executive leadership life coach, speaker, and the creator of the Perfectly Imperfect podcast. I love that. She has helped hundreds of high-achieving women manage their mindset, maximize their time, and monetize their business. Lynn has spent over 14 years in corporate America, working for some of the top brands like Gucci, Kenneth Cole, and Bed Bath & Beyond. Her mission is to activate leaders to redefine and step into their next level of success without struggle or stress. That's the important part. Her transformational coaching, speaking, and success secrets are often sought out by media. She has been featured on Forbes.com, Huffington Post, and affiliates of CBS, Fox, and ABC, just to name a few. Lynn, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Arwen. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled that you're going to share some really good stuff today. But before you launch into that, why don't you tell us all what song you brought to add to our Overcomer playlist?
Yes, so the song Happy by Pharrell Williams. I love that. It's such an upbeat song, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Why did you choose it? Just for that reason?
Yeah, just, there are very motivational songs, but sometimes we just need that like happy-go-lucky, like a kid, song that just like speaks to our soul, really.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Did you by any chance do you have any of the phrases or words in that song pulled up? Are you going to sing it for us?
Oh, you don't want me to sing.
Some people do.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I just know how it makes me, literally, whenever I put that song on, my body just moves. Like, it just moves. It speaks to my soul, literally.
Yeah, yeah, that is a great song, no doubt about it. Well, from a high note of a great, wonderful song that makes you feel happy, I know that you were talking about a number of years ago, you had landed yourself in the hospital. There were some pretty significant things going on with you. So why don't you take us all back there? What was going on?
Yeah, so I was in corporate America. I was working in the fashion industry and love the industry. And I was really overwhelming my own self. Like I put the self-sabotage, the self-pressure, all of that on myself because I was linking my self-worth to how productive I was. And it was like the harder I worked and the more I could achieve and accomplish, the more love, the more recognition, the more, oh, what a great job, the validation that I received. So it fed my heart, it fed my identity. It fed that piece of me that wanted that recognition. And so I really put everything on hold. I put my relationships on hold. I put my health on hold, even my self-love on hold because I was so like just overwhelmed but it didn't matter because I was checking all the boxes. And I remember feeling this way, like I'm doing so much and yet it's never enough.
Yeah.
And that's what I always felt. So I was working, I remember we had this like a huge project and I was like, wow, this is really going to take like an 80-hour work week. Plus I had my business on the side. And I was like, you know what? It's only going to be 2 months. Like it's only going to be, 8 weeks. I can do this. I can put in the work. It's just going to be one of those busy times and I'm just going to have to suck it up. So literally I was eating, sleeping, and working. And I was getting cars home at night. Then I was eating Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks for dinner, lunch and breakfast. Like, yeah, I was having munchkins for dinner, like all of the things. And I remember there was so many red flags that were going off and I just didn't listen. Like I was exhausted. I was pushing myself. I wasn't celebrating. Like on the weekends I was working and I was working my side business because I was like in love with it. So I'm like, oh no, this fuels me. It's passion, blah, blah, blah. And yet I wasn't having fun. I wasn't dating at the time. I wasn't seeing friends. I would have conversations over the phone. So that was another thing. And then I also remember one day while I was working, again, it was this big project and I looked up the clock and it was 4:00 in the afternoon and I hadn't eaten, drank, or went to the bathroom. And so I knew it. I knew what I was doing to myself and I knew the red flags that were showing themselves to me. Yet I was so I would like to say like obsessed. I was obsessed and I was so plugged in being like, oh, it's only 8 weeks. I can do this. I can push through it. And my body was like, no, you can't. So in the middle of that time, similar to your story, I got 102 fever. I was feeling like crap. I was developing like rashes. I was developing like a candida, like, oral thrust in my mouth. Like my body was literally breaking down. So I remember, going to the doctors and my doctor's like, you are going to the emergency room right now. And so, they basically said, it was adrenal fatigue. I was in the hospital for 2 days. They had, I had IV. I was just, I was dehydrated. I was what is it?
Malnourished, yeah.
Malnourished. Can't speak today. And so, so that's what happened. And then after that, it took me 2.5 months to really recover because all I could do was sleep. I was exhausted. I had mono a couple years ago. It kind of like, came back because your body doesn't totally recover from that. So I was exhausted. So literally I did not work. I could not even see people. I was that tired.
So when you were in the hospital, could your mind, because you were so focused on could you even fathom the fact that you were in the hospital because you were pushing yourself so hard? Or was it kind of like instant wake up call?
No, instant wake up call. I was like, okay. Because at the time too, remember I had a side business. I was coaching women about self-love. So I was like, oh, well, isn't this funny? The universe gives you lessons.
The irony of life.
The irony, like, Kelly, what are you doing? Right. And I had a lot of shame around that too.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell people I was in the hospital because I'm coaching women on how to take care of themselves and how to love themselves more. Meanwhile, I wasn't doing it, you know, and I was doing it in certain instances, but in that 8-week period, I was not. Right. And so I remember like so clearly in the hospital being like, how did you get here? Like, what are you doing? This is ridiculous.
And you probably had a good amount of time to sit and think about that while you were there.
Yeah. And I remember like, you know, the TV had Judge Judy on and I'm like, what is going on? And yeah, I had quite a lot of time to think and process and be like, this is your lesson. Like, this is the lesson that you're going to master. Because you don't want to repeat it. And there has been times, and I developed like a few chronic illnesses during that time. And I like to say they're my biggest blessings now today because they are my, just kind of like whenever I am pushing myself or working too hard, they let me know. You know, it's like, nope, you can't, you know, are you going to do this again? So they're a blessing because they're my signals. They're my warning signs. Yeah, that you're pushing too hard.
Right. And you said that you had many red flags along the way. And I think this is something that many women face, and there might be plenty of women who are listening right now, that when you are exhausted, you cannot recognize those. When you are so depleted, when you are, you know, overworked, when you are malnourished, when you are dehydrated, those signals get all jumbled with other signals and you can't hear them and you can't sense them until it takes something like, I went into the ER a couple of years ago. I thought I was having a heart attack, and it was anxiety. It was that I was having acid reflux for such a significant period of time. And they got so mad at me because I took a number of days until I finally came into the ER. But it was just like, how sad that it was something that was solved with my Lanta. You know what I'm saying? Just like with yours, it was just, you needed to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we put so much pressure on ourselves, women especially, right? Just think of, you know, our mothers and our grandmothers and all of the generations that came before us. We are like superwoman. Like we are doing more than ever before. We're connected more than ever before. And as women, I think we want to create change. We want to create impact for the next generations. At least that's how I feel. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And sometimes we need to allow grace and space, and slowing down is the most beneficial thing that we can do. And if you were to say that to me a few years ago, that slowing down, I wouldn't even be able to hear you. Mm-hmm. Because slowing down was not, I felt like, oh, slowing down means laziness. Slowing down means, oh, you know, not the high productive, high performer type A personality that I am. And what I've learned about slowing down is you block your blessings when you don't make space for them to come into your life. Right. So you're not going to receive the blessing, whether it's the person, the situation, the opportunity, the abundance, the money, if there's no space for it to come in. So that was the biggest lesson about slowing down and giving myself grace and space and permission to just be, because I was the doing, right? The human doing. I wasn't the human being.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, if you think back to that time period, you did say if you were told that you needed to slow down, create some space, you wouldn't have even heard it. So is there really a way in which you can help cut through for women who are currently doing the same thing? They're doing instead of recognizing you've got to provide some of that space to just be. Is there anything that you think somebody could have said to you then that would have helped you maybe cut through a little bit of it?
Yeah, I would say the question I probably would have gotten my attention is, what is the cost of you not slowing down? Like if someone were to tell me that it would cost me 2.5 months of absolutely being able to do nothing and just sleeping, that would have woken me up. I'd be like, no, I don't have time to just sit in bed for 2.5 months. And if you came at that angle, I would have listened, I would have paid attention. So that's what I would say to people now is, think about, and I don't want people to think about the worst case scenario. However, right, it's like, can you, is it going to cost you something if you can't work, for 3 months straight or 6 months straight, or a diagnosis that really needs your attention right now instead of the doing. Yeah. So I think that would have caught my attention of, what are the, and, it can happen to you, not like you're invisible and it's not going to, because a lot of people think they have this level of success and like, oh, nothing can touch me. And it's like, yeah, like it can, look at COVID. I mean, there was no, some people got COVID, some people didn't, but there was no kind of, you have to protect yourself,
Right. Yeah. And you said something right at the beginning. You didn't exactly use the word ego, but you did say these accomplishments when you felt like that was providing your self-worth. And I think it's unfortunate, but a lot of times we have to learn these lessons the hard way because, one of the typical things that I think a lot of us do when we're younger is we think that the same rules don't apply to us that apply to other people. And we hear of, people running themselves into the ground or getting really sick or something just kind of, grinds their world to a halt. But the longer you live, the more people you talk to, the more common you realize that issue is, especially for high achievers, especially for those of us who like to have a lot of things that we're working on and we like task lists and we like affirmations. I'm a words of affirmation girl. I mean, that's one of my love languages. That doesn't, just because I enjoy that feedback doesn't mean that's not a bad thing. But when it becomes my self-worth, when it becomes the only thing that if I do this and I get good feedback, then therefore I'm a good human being and I'm doing the right things, it puts those of us who want that feedback in a position where that we're constantly doing what you were talking about, doing achievement, a next achievement, until the moment where you realize you're in a hospital bed or you're in your bedroom sleeping and there are no achievements outside of putting your feet on the floor and maybe taking a shower that day, and you recognize my value can't be found in a task list. And so when you were having to sleep these days away, were you able to get anything done, or did you really have to take this as a time of learning a whole new way of feeling good about yourself?
Yeah, no, I had literally had no energy. Like you said, sometimes it would be days that I could not even take a shower. Like it was that bad, and sometimes I just sleep through the day, sleep through the night. I was exhausted. My body was like screaming. And so, I like to compare it to kind of like a battery in your cell phone. Like it will just die. Like it's done. And I think we also have to treat ourselves like, recharging every day, and whatever that looks like, like plug in your cell phone, plug in your computer, right? Like plugging into yourself. I mean, that could simply look like going outside for 5 minutes and like breathing the fresh air. Or it could be, at least drinking, 3 bottles of water or glasses of water, like the hydration, right? They're so simple, yet we don't do them sometimes, right? Or maybe it's literally taking 10 minutes to just close your eyes and just sit and breathe. Like it can look like anything to anybody. And some people need to get away or, so I would just say these little things are so critical, especially to our mental well-being, right? Like we're talking about the physical well-being, but I mean, they're both connected. So it's kind of like, did you ever get a massage? I don't know. This happens to me sometimes. I'll get a massage and the masseuse is working on my body, yet my mind is going through my to-do list.
It's aggravating.
Yeah, so like what is the point, right? Like, yeah, your body's relaxed, but also the mind body connection is very strong. So if I'm sitting in a massage or laying in a massage and I'm thinking about all the things that I need to do, like that's no good either, right? So it's also like allowing your brain and your mind to take a rest. I mean, I don't know about you, but I also get really creative ideas when I'm in the shower and I'm not thinking about something, right? Your brain is at rest, the creativity and the things can pop in there, right? That's the space, like you're actually making space.
Yeah, yeah. Mine is when I go for runs, especially because I'm one of those crazy people who likes to run when it's still dark outside, and so and it's dark. And it's about when I get about a maybe 3/4 of a mile in, that's when I start my brain starts to tired, and then that's when those great thoughts and ideas come in because I'm not, like you were saying, I'm not going through this task list and what are all the things that I need to do in my day and get these things done. But you also reminded me with the massage thing, Abby Haverman, I think she was episode 4. She was talking about self-worth. She said self-care is not a spa day was the name of the podcast. And she talks about how many of us get into that trap thinking we're going to go get a massage, especially for women. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this luxury thing. I'm going to go get myself a massage. And by the time it's over, we have maybe a moment of rest, and then we walk outside and all of a sudden we're hit with life again, and we feel like we have somehow failed. And that was what the whole conversation was about, that self-care is not just a massage. It's what you said, it's being able to give your mind a rest, to not cram so much stuff in it that there is no space left for the things that you need to be well. And so it took you 2 months to finally be able to not be in bed all the time.
Yes. Yeah, not be in bed, actually function, actually work. And I will say this, I love that you bring up the rest. For me, it's like rest is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Full stop. And I think it's just so important. So yeah, 2.5 months of being like totally in bed, and then actually after that, like being able to like truly function, get back to work, like slowly but surely. So yeah.
Yeah. During that time period, do you are there any things that could have been said or done for you by people outside of your own, in your sphere of influence, and people who love you? Were there things that you found to be helpful that they said or they did during that time period, or maybe the reverse, that really, as you were going through this really significant physical issue, that maybe weren't so helpful?
Yeah, I mean, my friends and family were telling me, like, you need to relax, don't work so hard. And I was just in my own little world. Yeah. I was just in my own little bubble because I was so focused, on getting things done and seeking out that love and that validation and the appreciation from my work. So I don't know if things were said to me, and I think if I were to just stop, and just implement something. So I don't know if I would have, going back, I don't know, because I wasn't really listening, and if someone were to ask me that question of, well, what if something happens, that will totally take you out, then I may have listened. But I don't think anyone approached it from that angle for me. Just people were saying, you're working too hard, you need to rest, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I know. And so it's like, yeah, I know.
Oh, the ego.
Ego. Yeah. The ego.
Yeah. Oh, I've so been there. One of the things I know, because you work predominantly with high achieving women, correct?
Yes.
I always like to ask this question, and it's nothing that I had said to you ahead of time. What do you think is, and we'll get back to the topic at hand, but what does women supporting women look like to you?
That's a great question. I think women supporting women, what that looks like to me is really cheering each other on. Cheering each other on, being there, supportive of each other, and also being of service, meaning offending in the name of service. So if, in this case, if someone were to really just be like poking a hole in my ego and saying something that was totally like caught my attention, but was covered with love, and they were going to offend me, then I probably also would have listened, because I think that transformation occurs, yes, when you're loving that other person, and when you offend in the name of service, that's going to help that other person. And sometimes it's not always the nicest thing to say, but I think women supporting women, that's what we need to do for each other. Like being open. The other person also has to be open to hearing feedback, but also be raw, real, and honest with me. Like, I want to hear it, and being open to that feedback. So I think it's all the love and light. But sometimes that can be like spiritual bypassing. So what I like to say is like, give it to me real, real. And where is my ego getting in the way? Because women supporting women, it's also kind of like a child and a parent. Sometimes tough love is really helpful. It's a sign of love, even though it's tough. So that's a little bit of a different angle, maybe that you weren't prepared to hear, but.
No, I think that that's very, very insightful, and it's very true. And when we come back to that whole idea of ego, there's some, going around social media, there's some quote that about if somebody corrects you, and I totally am butchering it, but it's something like, if somebody corrects you and you're hurt by it, you have an ego problem, and I think you have to make sure that the caveats in there, that the person who delivered it has the authority in your life to deliver it, because they did it in a loving way. Mm-hmm. And they're not doing it because they want to hurt you. They're doing it because they truly want you to be better. And just like you said, offending in the name of service, which I've never heard it stated that way. That's really, really good. But it is looking at the ego. But I think a lot of times we ourselves are thinking, well, what are they going to think about me if I tell them the truth? And when you want the best for other people, especially women, when women can come alongside one another and stand arm in arm and say, I am not in competition with you. We are here to change the world. We are here to do something bigger and better than what we can do on our own. And so it's not about this comparison thing. It's just that I want to see you further on down the line into your own purpose and your own destiny. But this is a thing that you may not recognize, because we do get kind of in our own world that hyper focus, I'm doing a thing, and we need to take a moment to stop, which is what you were talking about.
Yeah, 100%. And it also comes from like the scarcity mindset. Oh, there's not enough in the world, or and it's like, no, like, how can we open our hearts, right? Like, the open heart is an open mind is an open heart. And I think a lot of the competition and the scarcity, the jealousy, like it's all linked. And it's like, there is 8 billion people almost in this world, and there is enough for everyone. And then that's what my coach says, for every person, there's at least like 200,000 people that can only hear you, like only hear your voice, your message, your service. There's probably more, but if you were to think there's 200,000 people that are just uniquely for you, your product, service, whatever you are, serving, that's huge, right? That's huge. If we can make that shift and not, come from that scarcity mindset. And that's where I was coming also too, in my whole burnout. It was like, oh, there's not enough. I have to do this in order to do this. And, when I have this, then I'll get that. It was like, and it was never enough. That was the whole thing. It's like, even though I checked the boxes and did the accomplishments, it was always like, what's next, and it was like that hamster wheel of like going on and on. Yeah.
So tiring. So when you look back at this time period of life, what would you say are the 3 main things that you did take away from that experience?
One is to just, even though you think you know it all, you may not know it all. And be open for the universe to give you lessons. We're all doing the best we can, and to just listen, just be 1% more of an open heart and open mindset. Two, I would say, now it's like just slowing down. Even again, if it's 1% more slower than yesterday, even if you can do only 1% today, even if that's like another cup of water, more than you drank yesterday. So taking the small baby steps is what I learned, because over time, those small baby steps will compile and compound. And you know that, right, from finance, over time. And then number three is just, I would just visualize myself as like baby Kelly, so just visualize yourself as you were at 2 years old or 3 years old, or even look at a child in your life, and how would you treat that child, right? So it's like, how would you treat you? So that's also the slowing down piece of it. I would have imagined myself as a baby, and I do that today. It's like, okay, what would baby Kelly need in this moment right now? So those are the three things.
What a beautiful word picture that way. I like baby me. I want to hug me. That's really smart. I like that. So the rapid fire final three questions. So best piece of financial wisdom that you've been given.
Oh my gosh. That you can create money in any moment. And I don't think I really knew that. Like, if I want to create money, I can do that, whether it's investing, whether it's, creating a product service. So just being aware and open that I can create money in any way. And of course, getting help with that if you need to, right? Sure. But knowing that you are a creative being and that you can create money.
That's neat. I haven't heard it said that way. That's really, really great. And what's a great book that you would recommend, and why?
Okay, so I'm reading it right now. I'm actually listening to it on Audible, The Science of Prosperity by Bob Proctor.
Okay.
It's really great. So I'm listening to it on Audible, but it's in a book format too. But it's all
what do you like about it? Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's about like the science of prosperity. So he basically interviewed like the most successful people in the world, and they do certain things to bring in prosperity. And also like it also talks about how we hold ourselves back, in our thinking and in how we're creating or not creating. So it's also like from a mindset and also like tactical perspective. So the science of prosperity.
I like it. And then finally, a quote. Favorite quote.
Quote. I posted this on my social media. Maybe that's why it's coming to mind, but I would remind yourself that I am God's highest form of creation.
Is that your quote?
I don't know if it's my quote.
It sounds like your quote today.
I don't think that's originated. I must have read it somewhere, but yeah.
I am God's highest form of creation. Oh, beautiful. I love it. So how can our listeners get a hold of you? Tell us all the good details.
Yeah, they can just head on over to my website at kellylynadams.com. And I'm on all the social media platforms under Kelly Lynn Adams too. So
very good. Well, you have been such a blessing. And, I just so appreciated the fact that you reached out to me, and you have such a vibrant, even through never meeting, just through an audible message to me, I'm like, this is a woman I need to know. And it completely confirms that you are an authentic, beautiful version of you, and it came across. So I just so appreciate you sharing your heart and your struggle with us today. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me on. I'm honored. I love your podcast. You're doing incredible things, and you're just helping other women too in this world. And we talked about this previously, but just the work that you're doing is literally changing generations. So thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. It made me cry. Well, thank you so much, my dear. I appreciate you coming on the show today.